Let's now take a look at how we might explore secondary sources at a very starting point of our ISI approach. Like you, I know a little bit about Risdon Cove now. I've done some background reading and I'm interested in finding some basic secondary sources about what happened, such as this one here. With a little bit of research, I found out a little bit about what's going on. Risdon Cove, I know, is actually on the Derwent River down here in Tasmania, near present day Hobart. Originally, Risdon Cove was the first settlement of Hobart before in 1804 the settlement moved to Sullivan's Cove and that became known as Hobart Town, and the events we're looking at are happening in May 1803, and hopefully some other secondary sources will give us an idea of what actually the debate is around what's going on there. The basic sources I went to, as you can see are this one I've got as the main part of my screen here, came from the second hit of my Google. The first one I've already looked at with you and it was Wikipedia. Now these are really basic starting points, but it's the way a lot of you work. My issue is I don't want to stay in that space. I do need to drill down into other sources such as Trove and look at the newspapers of the time, look at specific works, but where are they and who are those voices? This is how I find it out. The site that I went to, the second one, we can see here, and it's actually a teaching resource. It gives us a little bit of information about the background. I don't know how useful it is for me. Possibly good background, maybe not. I'd make some notes on it, I'd keep track of the website, but I may not, almost certainly won't, use something like this as one of the 4 to 6 selected sources that I'm going to keep in my ISI. Let's now see what that whole source looks like. When I open it up, I can actually see that it's a mix of different sources. I've immediately picked up on the heading, massacre, fairly emotive word. This isn't just killings. This is not a battle, this is a massacre at Risdon Cove, and there's a question mark. So this source, which kind of looks like a set of teaching resources when we see it on the screen like this, is already setting up debate. Within the source, there's a whole stack of secondary sources. Now I need to think about how I record those secondary sources within another source. How do I do this in a structured, organized way? Maybe there are templates that exist to help you. I've certainly tried to make some templates. There's a reason for that. Sources within sources often happens online. So you've got to be a little bit careful how you keep track of things, especially when we start bringing in primary sources. And we can't always assume that the creators of this website have been entirely accurate in how they've displayed that information. What edits have they done? What wording changes have occurred behind the scenes? So as historians, unfortunately, we have to keep drilling back to another level. How far back can we look at the provenance here? How far can we go in working out the source and taking it back to its original location? Let's pick up on this one then. This is a secondary source within a secondary source. I have my tools, wrap, adamant, what I'm starting to call cab mop. These tools have existed to help us pick apart a source. So let's now tear it to bits. Let's think of the A of adamant as a starting point, because that's one we've done a bit in class. The author. Well, who's the author? Bruce Elder. We've got to come up with some sense of how reliable Bruce Elder is. Who the heck is he? What qualifications does he have for saying these kind of things? Is he reliable? If so, why is he reliable? If not, why not? Is he representative of the wider view of what happened at Risdon Cove? Has he a particular agenda he's driving? Is it about making money when he wrote this? Is it to uncover the truth? Is he a social justice warrior? Is he a person who's involved in a legal fraternity, perhaps wanting to defend land ownership claims? What's his agenda, if there is one? Why has he written this? And interestingly, why 1788? Does it have something to do with the 200 years of Australia, the bicentenary of the first fleet arriving, and all the celebrations going on at the time? Why is that happening? Well, to work out who he is fairly interesting and fairly straightforward for you guys. It involves stalking people online often. So investigation takes us straight away to a whole stack of Google hits on people called Bruce Elder. When we eliminate the basketballers, the singers, and everyone else that could be out there, maybe we'll end up looking at Bruce Elder, the journalist, who won an award for a book he wrote. Okay, now it's interesting. He's a journalist. He's not a historian. Okay, let's see what else we can get out of that source. So there's plenty to talk about when we analyse authorship. There's stuff we can write. How do you do it? Well, that's something to think a little bit further down. But I've now got ideas to talk about in terms of features of the source, in terms of reliability, in terms of usefulness. Let's now think about the language choices in here. Are there particular techniques? What's put in? What's left out? What position is the audience being put in? Think of the audience. Are we being positioned by the writer? Use your skills in English here. Is this objective and evidence-based, or is it opinion-based? Is it persuasive? Is it trying to steer our sympathies and our empathy to certain places? Are we being manipulated here? Let's have a quick look at the writing. So what saw them approaching and were clearly disturbed? Clearly? Clearly? Okay, so am I allowed to have an opinion on that? They were almost certainly on a kangaroo hunt. What's evidence that that's actually taken place? Does everyone agree? Men, women and children. So like normal people like me, perhaps, I'm being positioned to have sympathy because no one would attack women and children. I mean, men, yeah, maybe in a war, but herding kangaroos. Okay, no spears. Definitely no spears. Okay, all right. So that's happened. But that doesn't fit with my understanding of the Wikipedia entry. Something might be going on. This feels maybe a bit more like my primary source of Edward White in 1830. Okay, William Moore, that military officer who was defending the community, according to some versions, had been drinking heavily the night before. He was hungover, depressed, antagonistic. I wonder what sources back that up. I wonder if there are sources that back that up. Certainly he doesn't sound a very nice bloke, and he sounds like he's not in his happy place when this event took place. He had blurry and bloodshot eyes. Okay, so we're into his body and seeing through his eyes now. And decided it would be good sport to see I'm not saying the N-word run. Oh, I wonder where that came from. That's very quotable. But he has no reference to it. So I can't actually track it back. Okay, for what it is. Moore would claim that only 3 had been shot, but other evidence more reliable than his attempts at official cover-up. You mean that ex-convict, the guy who was in jail, Edward White, more reliable than an officer in the British military? Okay, that seems an interesting and valuable comment he's made. Now I've got to weigh him up. Okay, it was bureaucratic nonsense, a glib rationale for a massacre, a justification without logic. Was it? These are now feeling very opinion-based. Maybe we're not allowed to debate this in Bruce Elder's eyes. So now I've got some features of the source we can talk about. I think we might pause on that source and start to think about what alternative interpretations there may be.